Greetings, I'm Reverend Yue McCormick, Head Minister of Nyuzan, Perfect Dragon Mountain, Shinganji, True Vow Temple of the Nichiren Shu Sangha of the San Francisco Bay Area. In this four-part presentation, it is my goal to cover those things about the teachings of the Lotus Sutra that Nichiren Shu expects its clergy to know. I feel that this might also be of interest to dedicated lay practitioners, as well as those who are curious about Buddhism and would like to know more about its founder and the basic teachings and practices that he taught. I will note that material appearing in dark red rather than black is material that is either not covered or not covered in detail in the book History and Teachings of Nichiren Buddhism, published by the Nichiren Shu Text Editorial Committee. This is material that I personally feel is important for Nichiren Buddhist practitioners to be familiar with, especially clergy and lay teachers. Quotes from the Lotus Sutra are taken from the Senju Murano translation. I have also drawn from the book Introduction to the Lotus Sutra by Yoshiro Tamura. Now let's begin the fourth of the four parts, opening the near to reveal the far. The original gate of the Lotus Sutra opens with what is called the concise opening of the near to reveal the distant. This is considered to be the first half of chapter 15, the appearance of bodhisattvas from underground, wherein the bodhisattvas from other worlds vow to propagate the Lotus Sutra after the Buddha's extinction. Instead, the Buddha says, "No, good man, I do not want you to protect or keep this sutra, because there are bodhisattva mahasattvas, 60,000 times as many as the sands of the river Ganges in this Saha world. They will protect, keep, read, recite, and expound the sutra after my extinction." After saying this, the ground of the Saha world quaked and cracked, and many thousands of billions of bodhisattva mahasattvas sprang up from underground simultaneously. Their bodies were golden colored and adorned with the 32 marks and with innumerable rays of light. They had lived in the sky below the Saha world. These bodhisattvas appearing from underground had four leaders: superior practice, in Japanese Jogyo, limitless practice, Muhengyo, pure practice, Jogyo, though the characters are different from superior practice, and finally steadily established practice, or Anyugyo. Maitreya Bodhisattva, on behalf of the assembly, asks where these bodhisattvas have come from, who taught them, and why they have suddenly appeared. This portion of the chapter is known as the concise opening of the near to reveal the distant, because it hints at the revelation that Shakyamuni Buddha has actually attained Buddhahood in the remotest past, and that he is the original Buddha who is the teacher of these bodhisattvas, who are his original disciples. The expanded opening of the near to reveal the distant begins when the Buddha explains that the bodhisattvas appearing from underground have long been his disciples in the Saha world. This is the beginning of the one chapter and two half chapters that comprise the main discourse of the original gate of the Lotus Sutra. Following the Buddha's response, Maitreya Bodhisattva asks how the Buddha could have taught this multitude of bodhisattvas appearing from underground for so long if his attainment of awakening for the first time was under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya only 40 years prior. It is like a 25-year-old saying that 100-year-old men are his sons. The Buddha responds to this question in the 16th Duration of the Life of the Tathagata chapter. In the 16th chapter, the Buddha says 3 times to Maitreya Bodhisattva and the rest of the assembly, "Good men, understand my sincere and infallible words by faith." 4 times they reply, "Tell us, we will receive your words by faith." After these exchanges, the Buddha says, "Listen to me attentively. I will tell you about my hidden core and supernatural powers. The gods, men, and asuras in the world think that I, Shakyamuni Buddha, left the palace of the Shakyas, sat at the place of enlightenment not far from the city of Gaya, and attained Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi 40 and odd years ago. To tell the truth, good men, it is many hundreds of thousands of billions of nayatas of kalpas since I became the Buddha." He proceeds to explain the length of time since he attained Buddhahood in terms of a practically unquantifiable span of time, referred to in abbreviated form as the 500 dust particle kalpas. This is actually supposed to be an unquantifiable amount of time, much longer than the period of the 3,000 dust particle kalpas referred to in chapter 7. Shakyamuni Buddha explains that since his attainment of Buddhahood in the remotest past, he has been teaching using the 6 occasions of showing the deeds and figures of Buddhas. I told the stories of my previous lives in some sutras, and the stories of the previous lives of other Buddhas in other sutras. I showed my emanation bodies in some sutras and my transformation bodies in other sutras. I described my deeds in some sutras and the deeds of others in other sutras. In the above passage, the Buddha refers to showing emanation bodies, though the Chinese characters can be literally translated as divided body. An emanation body refers to the emanations of a Buddha or Bodhisattva that appear in various forms as a means of guiding sentient beings in the worlds all over the universe so that they may attain liberation from suffering. You may recall that in chapter 11, the Buddha recalled all his emanations in the worlds of the 10 directions so that he could open the stupa of treasures, and these are the Buddhas of the worlds of the 10 directions. The Buddha also refers to his transformation bodies. A transformation body, nirmanakaya in Sanskrit, can also be translated as an accommodative body. This body is the physical form body, or rupakaya, that a Buddha assumes in a specific time and place in order to lead people to awakening through his compassionate actions and teachings. Shakyamuni Buddha, viewed as the Buddha of history in our world, is an example of a Buddha appearing as an accommodative body. Accommodative bodies seem to have finite lifespans because they appear as Buddhas who are born as human beings, attain Buddhahood, turn the wheel of the Dharma, and when they are done teaching, they enter final nirvana. What this statement of Shakyamuni Buddha means is that all the other Buddhas referred to in his discourses are either emanations or transformations of himself as the original Buddha who attained awakening in the remotest past. As the original or eternal Shakyamuni Buddha, he is the living Buddha that Buddhists can take refuge in. All the other Buddhas of the other worlds are of the past, or even the future, are just aspects of the eternal Buddha. Keijin Mamiya says of this, it may seem that as long as we remember that the eternal Buddha is at the base of the individual Buddhas, we can put our faith in any Buddha. Nichiren Shonin severely criticized such a theory, saying that it makes light of the base and emphasizes trivial details. Immediately following the teaching about the 6 occasions of showing the deeds and figures of the Buddhas, the Buddha says, all that I say is true, not false, because I see the triple world as it is. I see that the triple world is the world in which the living beings have neither birth nor death, that is to say, do not appear or disappear, that it is the world in which I do not appear or from which I do not disappear, that it is not real or unreal, and that it is not as it seems or as it does not seem. I do not see the triple world in the same way as the living beings of the triple world do. I see all this clearly and infallibly. Here the Buddha is explaining his own awakened view of life, a view that transcends the dichotomies of birth and death, self and other. In this awakened view, there is no dharma, which is to say no phenomena, that has a substantial beginning or end. So even the Buddha's Buddhahood, the duration of the life of the Tathagata, has no substantial beginning or end. Shakyamuni Buddha goes on to state that even though he will appear to enter final nirvana, in fact, his remaining lifespan is twice as long as the span of time that has already passed since attaining Buddhahood. Since this Saha world where we live is also where the eternal Shakyamuni Buddha lives, it is actually a pure land. It is only our ignorance and delusions that cause us to misperceive this pure land as a realm of suffering. In the verses of chapter 16, called the Jigage in Japanese, the Buddha says, the perverted people think, this world is in a great fire. The end of the kalpa of destruction is coming. In reality, this world of mine is peaceful. It is filled with gods and men. The gardens, forests, and stately buildings are adorned with various treasures. The jeweled trees have many flowers and fruits. The living beings are enjoying themselves, and the gods are beating heavenly drums, making various kinds of music, and raining mandrava flowers on the great multitude and me. This pure world of mine is indestructible, but the perverted people think, it is full of sorrow, fear, and other sufferings. It will soon burn away. Borrowing the term used in the contemplation of the Universal Sage Bodhisattva Sutra, wherein Shakyamuni Buddha is called Vairocana Buddha, this pure land is called the Pure Land of Eternally Tranquil Light by Tiantai Juri and Nichiren Shonin, although Nichiren also refers it as the Pure Land of Mount Sacred Eagle. In order to explain why he uses the skillful means of saying that he will enter final nirvana, when in fact he will remain on Mount Sacred Eagle, teaching the Dharma in the world, the Buddha tells the assembly the parable of the excellent physician and his children, which was summarized in part 2 of this series. The latter half of chapter 17 until the end of the Lotus Sutra is the transmission section of the original gate. In chapter 17, the variety of merits, the Buddha says, anyone who hears that my life is so long and understands it by faith, even at a moment's thought, will be able to obtain innumerable merits. This is the teaching concerning the merits of even a single moment of understanding by faith. The 17th chapter teaches that the innumerable merit of having even a single moment of true faith is 100,000, 10,000, and 100,000,000 times greater than that of practicing the first 5 of the 6 perfections, which is to say generosity, morality, patience, energy, and meditative absorption, again with the exception of the 6th, perfect wisdom. Chapter 18, the merits of a person who rejoices at hearing this sutra, also teaches that those who rejoice at hearing a verse or phrase of the Lotus Sutra, even for a single moment of rejoicing, will attain incalculable merits. And such people relate their joy to other people, who in turn tell it to still others, until the joyful words concerning hearing the Lotus Sutra reach the 50th person in succession. The merits of the 50th person rejoicing at hearing the sutra will not be as great as that of the first person. Nevertheless, their merit will still be immeasurably great. According to chapter 19, the merits of the teacher of the Dharma, those who put into practice the 5 practices of a teacher of the Dharma, namely keeping, reading, reciting, expounding, and copying the Lotus Sutra, will obtain hundreds of merits that will enable them to bring about the purification of the 6 sense faculties, which are the 5 physical senses and the mental faculty. In chapter 20, Never Despising Bodhisattva, Shakyamuni Buddha tells the assembly about his past life as never despising Bodhisattva, who greeted all whom he met with the words, "I respect you deeply, I do not despise you." Why is that? It is because you will be able to practice the way of Bodhisattvas and become Buddhas. Chapter 21, The Supernatural Powers of the Tathagata, relates the specific transmission, or Betsu Fuzoku, by Shakyamuni Buddha, of the essence of the Buddha Dharma, in 4 phrases to superior practice Bodhisattva and the other Bodhisattvas appearing from underground. The 4 phrases refer to the passage where the Buddha states that all the teachings, all the unhindered supernatural powers, all the treasury of the hidden core, and all the profound achievements of the Tathagata are revealed and expounded explicitly in the Lotus Sutra that he is transmitting. Chapter 22, Transmission, relates the general transmission, or So Fuzoku, of the Dharma to all the Bodhisattvas, excepting the Bodhisattvas appearing from underground, who received the specific transmission in the 21st chapter of the Lotus Sutra. At the end of chapter 22, the assembly in space comes to an end. This is also the end of the 8 chapters, 15 through 22, wherein the original disciples of the original Shakyamuni Buddha are present to hear and receive the wonderful Dharma so they can transmit it in the Saha world in the latter age. The following 6 chapters constitute the final part of the Lotus Sutra. It is in these chapters that the stories of various bodhisattvas are told, and protection is promised to the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra. Chapter 23, The Previous Life of the Medicine King Bodhisattva, concerns itself with the story of Gladly Seen by All Beings Bodhisattva, who is a past life of Medicine King Bodhisattva, who is in the assembly. In his previous life, Medicine King Bodhisattva literally burned with zeal for the Dharma by turning himself into a living incense stick using his miraculous powers. The Buddha then states that the merit of upholding even a single verse of the Lotus Sutra is far superior to burning a finger or toe as an offering. In this chapter, the Buddha declares that the Lotus Sutra is the king of all sutras. This chapter is also where the term Kozen Rufu, meaning wide propagation, can be found. In chapter 24, Wonderful Voice Bodhisattva visits the Saha world and pays his respects to Shakyamuni Buddha and the other bodhisattvas who are present. In this chapter, the Buddha describes the many transformations of Wonderful Voice Bodhisattva and how he protects and teaches the sentient beings of the Saha world. After that, Wonderful Voice Bodhisattva makes offerings to Shakyamuni Buddha and to the Stupa of Treasures and returns to his own world. In chapter 25, The Universal Gate of World Voice Perceiver Bodhisattva, Shakyamuni Buddha teaches that World Voice Perceiver Bodhisattva perceives and saves all who are troubled and who single-mindedly call upon her name. It is also taught that World Voice Perceiver Bodhisattva can assume any form at will in order to expound the Buddha's teaching. Upon hearing this, Endless Intent Bodhisattva offers a necklace to World Voice Perceiver Bodhisattva, but the Bodhisattva does not consent to accept it. Endless Intent offers it again, and this time Shakyamuni Buddha asks World Voice Perceiver Bodhisattva to accept it out of compassion. She does so, but then divides the necklace in 2 and gives one half to Shakyamuni Buddha and the other half to the Stupa of Treasures. Chapter 26, Dharanis. In this chapter, Medicine King Bodhisattva, brave and giving Bodhisattva, Heavenly King hearing everything, Heavenly King nation upholding, as well as the Rakshasi, Kishimojin, and her 10 daughters, all utter Dharani for the protection of those who uphold the Lotus Sutra by keeping it and teaching it to others. In chapter 27, King Wonderful Adornment as the previous life of Bodhisattva, Shakyamuni Buddha tells the assembly the story of King Wonderful Adornment, Queen Pure Virtue, and her 2 sons, Pure Storehouse and Pure Eyes, who lived in the time when Cloud Thunderpeel Star King Flower Wisdom Buddha was teaching the Lotus Sutra. Queen Pure Virtue and her 2 sons convinced King Wonderful Adornment to go with them to see the Cloud Thunderpeel Star King Flower Wisdom Buddha and hear the Dharma. When the king did so, that Buddha gave him the assurance of future Buddhahood and told him that he would become Sal Tree King Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha then reveals the King Wonderful Adornment is presently Flower Virtue Bodhisattva, Queen Pure Virtue is Light Adornment Appearance Bodhisattva, and the 2 sons are Medicine King Bodhisattva and Medicine Superior Bodhisattva. In chapter 28, the encouragement of Universal Sage Bodhisattva, Universal Sage Bodhisattva arrives and promises to protect and support those who keep the Lotus Sutra in the latter age of degeneration and provides them with Dharani spells. He even declares that the ability to keep the Lotus Sutra is made possible through the aid of his sustaining power. He goes on to say that those who keep the sutra, read and recite it, memorize it and understand it, and act according to it are doing the same practice as he does. Nevertheless, Shakyamuni Buddha tells Universal Sage Bodhisattva that he should greet a keeper of the Lotus Sutra in the same way that he would greet the Buddha himself. With that, the Lotus Sutra comes to a close. According to Keijin Mamiya in History and Teachings in Nichiren Buddhism, the greatest message of the Lotus Sutra is, become a messenger of the Tathagata. He also says, this is the greatest message of the Lotus Sutra, to keep teachers of the Dharma and messengers of the Tathagata present and active. This guarantees Shakyamuni Buddha's eternity. In Mahayana Buddhism, there is a Sanskrit term that may be applicable here, adhisthana, which means sustaining power. In Japanese, kaji. It refers to the supernatural power of the Buddhas and advanced bodhisattvas to provide sustaining power to other practitioners. Looked at another way, however, it means that the Buddhas and bodhisattvas need to act through us. In our own practice and efforts to live the Lotus Sutra and share its spirit with others, we are the activity and embodiment of the eternal Shakyamuni Buddha's sustaining power. As Nichiren Shonin says in Kanjin Hanzan Sho, not only the voice hearers, but also Shakyamuni Buddha is within us. For we encounter such a statement like this in the 2nd chapter of the Lotus Sutra. It was my, Shakyamuni's, original vow to let all beings become like myself. My vow has now been fulfilled. I have helped them all attain the way of the Buddha. Does this not mean that Shakyamuni Buddha, who has attained perfect enlightenment, as our flesh and blood, and all the merits he has accumulated before and after attaining Buddhahood, are our bones? Further on, Nichiren Shonin says, Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord Preacher of this Pure Land, has never died in the past, nor will he be born in the future. All those who receive his guidance are one with this eternal Buddha. To return to the earlier question of whether the Lotus Sutra is really the word of the Buddha, it is our conviction as Nichiren Buddhists that the Lotus Sutra does in fact express the true intention or original will of Shakyamuni Buddha. Keijin Mamiya states, what then is the original will of the Buddha? All living beings can become Buddhas. There is no living being who cannot become a Buddha. It might also be said that through the trace gate, we can have faith that all those who follow the Buddha's teachings are traveling on the one vehicle and will someday attain Buddhahood. However, through the original gate, we can have faith that the Buddha is already and always present in our lives, enabling us to be messengers of the Buddha, whose message is that Buddhahood is not in the past, or in the future, or in another world, but always flowering right here and now. With that, I bring the 4th part of this 4-part presentation of the teachings of the Lotus Sutra to a close. I hope that this presentation was helpful and informative and will help to enrich your faith in and practice of Nichiren Buddhism.